Stalker 2 just released, and it's quite different from the original trilogy, having numerous changes and unique mechanics you probably haven't noticed. So here are 10 quick tips to help you survive in the zone. Also, I'm playing on veteran difficulty, so ignore that everything deals tons of damage. The first tip will be about looting various enemies. Whenever you kill an enemy, their weapon drops. Makes sense. But you probably didn't know that the weapon they drop still has mags inside, meaning to get the most out of your enemies, unload all weapons they have on them. This is especially important as they can have some powerful armor-piercing ammo that you can then use against stronger enemies like the military. Now let's shift our focus to the zone's exploration. Thankfully, Stalker 2 doesn't follow the annoying design choice popular in AAA games, where the map is littered with tons of random question marks. Of course, some locations like anomalies are still marked on the map, but the fascinating and important ones aren't indicated in any way. Many times, while I was simply wandering around the zone, exploring my surroundings, I was running into a side quest or a special event I would have otherwise missed. However, these places are rather easy to spot as the game autosaves before the event happens. For example, here you can find a stalker who asks you to bring the body of his friend. Another unique encounter will be located in this small hut, which will unlock the hideout of a powerful NPC wielding a sniper rifle. Another way to get good loot, although harder to spot, is the various dead stalkers and stashes scattered all around the zone. They aren't marked in any way, and finding them mostly boils down to exploring every single inch of the map. Now, what you should know is that if a stalker died, and his body hasn't been looted, this is probably a bad sign, as this means that some powerful mutants like bloodsuckers are roaming around. We'll talk about mutants a bit later, because they received quite a few changes. What you should know is that the game rewards you for exploring everything and going in places you weren't supposed to. This is greatly demonstrated by the various stashes found all around the zone. You probably remember how in previous iterations of the franchise, you could spend hours exploring every little house you come across to find a completely empty stash, because the content of these stashes is generated only after you receive the coordinates of these stashes. Well, rejoice, Stalker fans, as now stashes always have loot. It doesn't matter if you know the coordinates or just find them while wandering around, the loot will still be there, all the time. Even though most of the time it consists of simple medkits and ammo, it's still better than nothing. Although I've managed to find a gas mask located near the stash, so maybe if you explore a bit more, you'll find something even better. And while we're on the topic of looting various stashes, it's about time we talk about the journalist stashes. Now, if you're like me and brought the super mega limited golden special edition of the game, you were promised lots of various equipment. And most of this equipment is very powerful, featuring exoskeletons and numerous endgame guns. That's why the Ultimate Edition rewards are presented in the form of stashes. After you complete the Needle in a Haystack quest, you will get a mission to examine your stash. Upon doing so, you receive a message from a stalker called the Journalist, alongside the coordinates of numerous stashes, scattered all throughout the zone. These stashes will contain the bonuses for obtaining the Ultimate Edition of the game. And I think this is the best way to incorporate these bonuses into the game, because it would have been very weird if you suddenly received tons of items out of nowhere. For now, I have looted only the stashes located in the lesser zone, and to be honest, the rewards are pretty good, featuring weapons with unique monolithian skins and descriptions. These weapons will be very helpful in defeating the numerous mutants of the zone. And this is the 5th piece of advice I will give you: don't underestimate mutants. In Stalker 2, almost every mutant poses a great threat and should be avoided if possible. An example that demonstrates this quite well are the Fleshes. While in previous games, the Flesh was one of the easiest mutants to kill, rarely attacking the player and preferring to instead run away from them. But in Stalker 2, they not only attack you immediately, but they also have a special jump attack that deals tons of damage. Every mutant has been changed in one way or another, which makes them extremely difficult. For example, bloodsuckers now stun the player and have lots of health. For you to understand, the footage you're seeing right now has been sped up by 10 times. However, the worst change is that now you can no longer loot mutants. That's right, Zaharov won't be getting his bloodsucker jaws anymore. This change is a mystery to me because certain mutants have an inventory when they carry a quest item, like these collars you give to traders. So it's a complete mystery to me why not add a couple of items that drop from mutants that you can then sell to make some money. Now there is no purpose in killing mutants, which is my next tip. Avoid entering combat with mutants. As I already explained, they don't drop anything, so there is no reason to deliberately choose to fight them. And even if killing these mutants is a part of the quest or is essential for you to survive, then make sure to utilize nearby surroundings to avoid spending your precious ammo or grenades. So whenever you see an anomaly near the place where you're fighting mutants, try to lure them into one. This sounds obvious, especially since we've already used these mechanics in previous Stalker games. But Steam shows me that only 40% of people got the achievement for killing a mutant with an anomaly, so I feel like it's important to mention that this is in fact a possibility. Or what's even better is to wait for a friendly squad to kill the enemies for you. When wandering around the zone, you'll often encounter battles between NPCs and mutants or other stalkers. And the best thing to do in this situation is to not help your allies and simply wait it out. Sure, it sounds wrong, but in terms of loot you get, this is much better. Because if the friendly squad wins, you'll loot the bodies of the enemy squad without wasting a single bullet on them. And if the enemies manage to take out your friends, you can finish off the remaining foes and loot all participants' bodies. This is especially important in the early game when you're at your weakest and have barely any money. Which brings me to another way you can save up rare and important supplies. Don't use medkits. I know it sounds strange, but hear me out. Whenever you're fighting enemies or mutants and you receive damage, you immediately want to use a medkit. Even the game suggests that you use this specific item. But if you utilize a medkit every time you take damage, eventually you'll run out of them. So instead, it's better to analyze the situation in which you find yourself and choose appropriate healing items. For example, you're in the midst of combat, but your enemies are far away and you didn't take a lot of damage. Well then, it will be better to use bandages. Despite what you might think, bandages not only get rid of bleeding, but also heal you. This healing ability, paired with how easily you can find bandages compared to medkits, makes them very useful in combat. Although if you're fighting a dangerous mutant like a bloodsucker who annihilates your entire health bar, it's obviously better to use medkits. Basically, the way I see it, if my health drops below 50%, then I need to use a medkit, because otherwise I'll just get one-tapped. But if I didn't receive as much damage, then it would be much more beneficial to use bandages. Now, this tip is useful in case you want to save resources. But what if you want to make as much money as possible? Well then make sure to sell your enemy's weapons to merchants. Once again, thanks to my experience playing other Stalker games, I was used to the fact that traders won't buy a weapon unless it's in good condition. But in Stalker 2, this was finally changed. Even if the weapon you find on your enemies is below 50% condition, you can still sell it to the local merchant to make a decent amount of coupons. You can understand that a weapon can be sold to a merchant if the damage indicator is yellow. So even if the condition of the weapon is at 40%, it can still be sold for some decent money. Oh yeah, and also make sure to sell the various notes and PDAs you'll find. They will still be saved in your logs entry, but won't take up space in your inventory. And the final tip will be not really a tip, but more like a bug fix. Depending on how much you've played Stalker 2, you've most likely encountered a glitch that doesn't allow you to run. Your character walks extremely slowly despite you holding the sprint button. The way to fix this bug is actually really easy, as all you have to do is take your weapon and lean to the left. And that's it, now you can run once again. So that was all, thank you everyone for watching, remember to like and subscribe, and I see you in the next video.